Hello, everyone. Patrick Scott here. It is the 11th of April, and welcome to today's YouTube Live. It's been a while. And, I do these whenever I can, whenever I'm in town and I'm not, teaching or that kind of thing. So I know we intend to do them absolutely every week. And I apologize that I just can't. I'm going to put my phone on airplane mode so that we're not disturbed. And I'm hoping that you're having a great week. It is Friday. Here in Las Vegas, it is getting warm. It is 90 something, and I think the high is going to be 96 or 7 today. And so it is instantly summer, it feels like. I hear that we're going to get a reprieve. It doesn't feel bad. I know for those of you that have been to Las Vegas, you know that it's not horrible, that the heat, when it gets to be 120, it gets to be ridiculous. So today, there's a lot going on in the world right now. And I have my own little benchmark for what's going on in the world with people because people are, they reach out to me and they talk to me, and I teach lots of different kinds of groups of people, professionals, and I work with everybody from birth to death. And there is an overall global anxiety going on right now. If you've not been under a rock, the U.S. policies. And and I'm pretty apolitical, um, but I see the impact that things are having, and I work with lots of different kinds of people. And so, today I want to take a bit of a departure and look at aging and healthy aging. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1959. I'm 65 years old, going to be 66 in my next birthday, and I now am interacting with people my age or older, friends, family, and I notice those who are successful in aging and those who are not. And so, what I want to and you've heard me talk about the 7 deadly habits of highly miserable people in terms of couples counseling and just kind of the communication behaviors to avoid. Today, I want to talk about the 12 deadly habits of aging that really are going to not be very successful. So, what I'm going to do is I don't have a handout or anything, but I'll just put it in the chat and you can follow along and we'll have a little dialogue about the 12 deadly habits of aging. And the first one I want to talk about is, excuse me while I look all over the place. Number one is that they will stop learning. I am a lifelong learner. I have a lot of college and I am intellectually curious. And I think that when folks get older, sometimes they lose that curiosity, they lose that interest, and can typically be focused on the past and focused on things the way they used to be. And we had a great dialogue today. And part of the reason why I teach, and I teach people of all ages, the question at group supervision with the clinicians today at Heads Up was, how is AI going to influence our documentation? And because I am in it and I'm teaching it and I'm a field instructor and a college professor, and I have to stay current. And although sometimes begrudgingly I go to these classes and I take continuing education workshops and I certainly study lots of different things, it is easy for us to get in a rut and just think, well, I know everything I want to know, and to stop reading, to stop being interested. And you've heard me talk about many times about the internet, and what my mother, who was born in 1913, would do with the internet. Now, never saw the internet. She never had email. She died in 1984 before any of that was available. And I think she aged well. Now, she was a drinker and she was a smoker, and I think she died prematurely at 70 because she was a drinker and a smoker, but she was always very intellectually curious. She was well read. Would always look at the news, read the Sunday paper, and so on. And I think were she alive today, she'd have an iPad and she would be really interested in what's going on in the world and things like that. So the question before the group today was, how do we as clinicians handle AI? AI is all that. And I told them a story, lest you think that I'm stuck in the mud. About a year ago, the clinic we chose to become accredited with the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospital Organizations. And it's a big deal. For those of you in healthcare, you know that getting a Joint Commission accreditation is not without a lot of work. So as clinical director, I was charged with writing a slew of policies. Now, I know this is public, but I'm coming out. I'm coming out about my use of AI. And I don't think I can get in trouble because they've already been approved. So anyway, I was faced with writing about a dozen policies to adhere to national guidelines around healthcare. And I've written policies before. And for those of you that are healthcare administrators or you write policies and procedures and things like that, HR people, it's tedious. The language has to be specific and it has to be inclusive, and there's lots of rules. So I went on to Chat GPT and I just typed in, I didn't dictate it, I just typed in, I am a clinical director of a Nevada based mental health organization in zip code 89102, and I need to write a policy on X, on safety, on whatever it was. And I was amazed. I mean, it within seconds came up with a complete, beautifully written policy, better than I could have done. And I had to make a few adjustments to, just edit a few things to make it applicable to our clinic and our location with our address and all that kind of stuff. And just so you know, all dozen policies were approved by the Joint Commission. And I kind of weird coming out like this because I feel, and shows my age. I feel like I'm cheating, like, well, shouldn't I have manually typed it all in? Nope, I used AI, and they were good, and they were good enough because what we're learning is that with all the available information in the world, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you go to do something. We have lots of technology and lots of information at our disposal. So my 12 policies I did in 4 hours, which would have taken me weeks, really, if I would have manually had to type word for word. And I was able to edit them. And so the question before the group today was, can we use AI for our charting? Doctors of all kinds, healthcare providers of all kinds have to document every session. And whether you know it or not, your doctor is writing a note after your session. Your dentist, there's a chart that your information goes to. And, the federal guidelines are very protective about that. Now, I joked where I said, well, this sort of adoption of AI is on a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum is absolutely not. It's not compliant. It's, you're putting it out on the internet to get information and the big brother is watching. And then the other side of the spectrum is that there are more and more healthcare organizations that are using AI in terms of documentation. That's going very well. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. But the first sign of aging that is really not good is if we stop learning. So number two, let's go there. Number two, which is also a deadly habit of highly miserable people, is complaining. Now, you've heard me talk about this statistic before, that we are predisposed for negativity. Even the most positive person in the world, just the way I want to be careful here. I am not assigning blame. I'm just saying that many of us are pretty perfectionistic and we look for what's wrong. We look for what's missing. And there's a reason for that. A UCLA study that's been going on among school-age children for decades now wanted to know, for every positive message a child hears, how many negative messages they hear. And the ratio at home was 12-1, meaning for every positive attaboy, good job, they heard 12 negative messages like take the cat out of the microwave, stop strangling your sister, that kind of thing. At school, it was 18-1. 18-1. Hi, Early, and hi, Amber, and hi, Joshua. I'm going to try to feel like I'm just looking all over the place. So trying to make eye contact and look at the chat. So forgive me. 18-1, which predisposes all of us. And by the way, this is a United States-based study that was done since the early 1960s. And the statistics have stayed the same, where children are exposed to more negative messages than positive messages, which is why we think we are predisposed to complain and whine and find fault and criticize and put down and all that stuff. So to grow older, when you have lots of aches and pains and things aren't going so well anymore, it is not surprising that we complain. And a deadly sign of aging is, I don't know if you've ever been around old people. Now, some old people that I'm around are super positive and just delightful. You wonder, gosh, how can they be so amazingly upbeat and positive with all that goes on in aging? I had Aunt Lillian for that. And, she was absolutely a being of light. I mean, she was 90 when I met her. She was my mother's aunt. She was my great aunt. And I'd moved to California and oh my God, she was one of these people, little bit of a thing, tiny, person. And she would share with me pictures. Now this, to give you an idea of the lifespan of how it was, I was 25 when I met her and I moved to California. She lived in California her whole life. Her husband was an actor, a contracted player with like MGM or something. His name was Bud Weiser. I am not making that up. Bud Weiser. Like the beer, get it? It was a stage name, Bud Weiser. Okay, never mind. So Aunt Lillian, oh my God, what a hoot. We would go out to the Brown Derby, we would go out to the restaurants, and she'd take me to lunch and just a bright breath of fresh air. And she lived to be 100, almost 100, right? Contrast that with many older people who, when you talk to them, well, how's it going? Well, let me tell you about this. Now, lest they find out you're a provider or a mental health person or a coach or something, and you got let me show you my scars and let me show you my colostomy bag and let me tell you about all my aches and pains. And so, what I'm saying is that as you grow older, watch your mouth. There's always something that you can find fault with and criticize and put down. But if you can keep a positive attitude and stay bright and stay upbeat and positive, oh, and Anna Marie is here. Hello. So it's kind of fun. So if you can stay bright and positive and sometimes fake it till you make it. Now, the reality is people don't necessarily want to know how bad it is, you know. They don't. They really do know, "Hey, how are you doing?" They don't really wanna know. Now, forgive me, but have you ever been in the grocery store line or been on a plane or something, and you just, you're trying to make conversation and you're trying to be nice, and you say, "How's your day going?" "Well," and they tell you exactly how their day is going. That level of negativity or criticism, even if it's not about you, is not pleasant to be around. And what I find in my own wallowing in self pity, and yes, I can go there too, it feeds on itself. And so that will lower your vibration, brings everybody down. And so I say, fake it till you make it. I know there are people that say, well, but you're lying. If you say everything's fine when it's not, well, I also want to try to stay positive, and sometimes I have to talk myself into it. So that's number two. Avoid complaining. Try to stay away from that. Number three is criticizing new things. That's number three. Back in the day, we did it this way, we did it that way. Now, this shows up in organizations, it shows up in families, it shows up in parenting, it shows up with technology. Um, I am forever challenged. I sat with a graduate student just a moment ago, and so understand, I'm a college professor. I'm a field instructor. It's kind of the people come here to do their internships and their graduate student residency and that kind of stuff here. And I'm on the faculty of over 30 universities and 5 medical schools around the world. I don't say that to impress you. It's just that whenever a student does their internship here at Heads Up, I have to be a faculty member. They have to credential me. I have to have a license. I have to have insurance. And so it's a deal. And so over the years, I've accepted students from many, many universities around the world. And so I'm credentialed with all these. And again, when I say that I'm a faculty member, it doesn't mean that I go to the college and teach classes. What it means is that their students do their field placement, their internship, their residency, their whatever you call it, clinical rotation, and it's always different for different things. So I have a new guy started this week. It's his first week, and he's with a university I haven't worked with for a couple of years. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Just to log in to my faculty profile so I can approve his hours, I'm going to be a little irreverent here, was like a frickin' act of Congress. I mean, the bending over backwards and the throwing salt over your shoulder and the two-factor authorization and the changing the password, and this is the wrong password, and you used the password before, and you have to use a new password, and it has to have this character and that character. You know what I'm talking about. This is the thing of daily life. Now, I sat here with him, and I said, okay, I just want you to time me how long it's going to take me to get into this website, to get in so I can approve your hours. Now, to be fair, and I could be a bit of a whiner myself, it was probably 7 or 8 minutes, with the sending the email and the checking on the phone and the two-factor authorization and the facing east and saying a prayer and throwing salt over your. I'm joking, but it's a thing. It's a deal. And I know that all of you deal with that. This is a fact of life. Now, I work with a lot of military folks, and if you think our day-to-day civilian two-factor authorization is something, it's hilarious with military folks in like top secret like CIA and FBI and military installations. I don't even want to go there, but I have kids and I have colleagues and patients and people who are do that. And where you have to change password every day, and you have to, I mean, it's crazy the security, and for good reason because there's so much fraud and there's so much stuff. So these are the deals with normal life. Now, my concern for older folks, there's a point at which I get done. I also had another graduate student who was doing our evaluation. And for the life of me, this one university and I cannot figure out how to do an Adobe PDF document where I can sign it and not lock it. And for those of you that are in it, if you don't understand what I just said, don't even bother. But so I have to do her evaluation. So I was trying and I just couldn't get it to work. What I wanted to do was just say F it, but I can't. So I said, do you have a minute to come in and supervise me through the process of doing your evaluation on this PDF, this Adobe document, so that because I can't sign it, because if I sign it, I lock it. And if I lock it, then nobody else can edit it. And then you get the drill, and so on. So I think it's concerning for older people at what point we all say, F it. Right. At what point do we go, I am done. I am done with the phones and the iPads. I'm done with the technology. Don't even two-factor this, you know, I don't want to do that anymore. So I do get concerned though that with the increasing complexity that older people can be left out. And so Josh says he's 38 and he's saying F it on many given days. So we're all in this together. So I want you to understand that from the point of view of a 65-year-old, my brother's 75, and I notice things, my brother's wife prints everything still. I have a printer here in the office. I never use it. I don't print anything anymore. I don't have any paper anymore. I don't know about you. Everything is scanned. Everything is taken pictures of. I just don't use paper that much anymore. And it's odd for me when the front desk or somebody says, I have something for you to sign. Like I have to actually, oh, I have a pen. That's right. I have a pen. Funny story. In our training documents for HUNA, for NLP, for the classes I do with the doctors, we now have to write, please bring a pen to the training. Now, when we're doing them in hotels, a lot of times the hotels will supply pens and people like to take them. But now anymore, when you go to a conference, you don't need a pen. Writing with this happens to be a fountain pen, which is even more archaic. Let's see if I can show it to you. There it is. And I like it because I like the way it feels. And I still journal. I like the feeling of pen to paper. Call me old fashioned. But older people can tend to just say enough with an Amber saying print everything. I saw YouTube with a nurse yesterday around HR issues, that if you're really having trouble with your workplace and you're trying to keep a paper trail, print everything. And so I have a colleague here that prints everything. I know my brother and his wife print everything, and they have lots of file folders that they walk around with. I don't. I really don't do paper much anymore, and that's me. So that's number 3. All right, let's look at number 4. Isolating. This is a big thing. Isolating. I don't like people. I shouldn't say that. I love people. I really do. My whole career, my whole life is about serving others. And not to be overly dramatic or altruistic, but I've made a career and life's purpose about helping create change and create value. And when I'm done with people, I'm done with people. I think you get my drift. The trouble is with as we age, and remember, I used to talk to Aunt Lillian, and I was like, I would ask her, what's the hardest part about aging? And she said, I've outlived everybody. I mean, she outlived my mother, who was her niece. She outlived her, outlived everyone. So it was really fun for a 25-year-old and a 90-year-old to get together and have lunch. But, oh my God, the stories of old Hollywood. Oh, I just loved it. It was so great. And that was her biggest complaint was that she was retired. She had a good pension. She lived well. She wasn't wealthy by any means, but she lived in her own apartment. Her husband had passed away, and she had and I don't know the details of the money because, you don't talk about that stuff, but she seemed to be doing okay, but she had to struggle to meet her needs, and that isolation was a big problem. And I see that increasingly, that not only because of hearing loss and just physical issues, people can't get around anymore. And so I'm really excited about this movement toward, and I forget the name of it. Somebody, if you want to put it in the chat about I want to say, well, it's like communal living, but they call it like co-housing or something, where you have your own little place, but it's in a compound with a bunch of other houses, and it's more than assisted living, but there's assisted living and there's nursing homes and that kind of stuff. And I do think that socialization is really, really important, and staying active is really important. It sounds cliche, but one of the things that older people can tend to do. And Josh says a brothel. Yeah, that's a different class. So the brothel is a different class, Josh, than co-housing or something. And I'm hearing, oh, hostel. Okay, there's hostels also, but for older people, I think it's called co-housing, where you have, like, if they use tiny homes and they put them in a cul-de-sac, and you got a bunch of elders, but they have their own place, but they have a communal living situation. Anyway, the point is, as we age, we don't hear as well. We don't and we, frankly, grumpy old men and grumpy old people don't necessarily want to. My mom moved into a senior citizens high rise when she was in her 60s. I forget exactly what year. And her biggest complaint was, this place would be great if it weren't for all the old people, you know? And she was pretty spry and pretty young, and she just kind of didn't really socialize very much. She had her one friend, Helen, and Helen would come over and they would drink bourbon together. And then they would have periodic fights, as drunks often do. But she had Helen, and she interacted with some people. And this was a lovely apartment building. It's still there, and it has a community room, and it's independent living, meaning there wasn't nurses or anything, but there was an element of socialization that could happen. And so isolation really can be. And yes, Anna Maria says co-housing. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate that. And it sounds like a dacha, or a, what's the other one? Ashram. Yeah, there's ashrams and communes and all that kind of stuff. And so for older people, I also love some of the trends I'm seeing where they're pairing preschoolers and elders. They're pairing pets and elders. They're pairing, where, because I mean, our elders have so much wisdom, and they just want to share it. And when I worked at the hospital back in the day, a lot of our volunteers were seniors, and it was so wonderful to have them, because they were just such a bright light, and they had so much wisdom and so much knowledge. And so, I just, as you get older, and if you have aging relatives, isolation can be a thing. All right, that's number 4. Let's go on to number 5. So this is important. Number 5 is skipping health-related activities. Skipping health-related activities. More than ever before, as we age, it's important to pay attention to our health. And I mean, and again, I'm not into, me, I do it all. I do the Western stuff, the Eastern stuff, the energy stuff, the woo woo stuff, the witch doctor stuff, the shaman stuff, and I believe in it all. And when I got cancer in 2017, and was, and Amber says, so start a borrow a granny grampy campaign. I love that service. Um, I got consultation, and I was told by my Kumu, who Kumu Matt, do everything, do everything. And so the concern, I think, because I do talk to seniors and I work with seniors, and a lot of their full-time job when they're retired is just going to doctors. And it does get really tedious. And the challenge is, um, in the absence of going to doctors. Now, I will tell you, be a little bit vulnerable. My father died at 50 of lung cancer, and I never knew him. I was, I think, 15 months old when he passed away. And my mother would talk about how he just didn't like doctors, and how in the years before he ultimately collapsed in the community, he was having headaches, he was having symptoms. And she would say he just didn't believe in doctors. He just didn't, because he knew he smoked a lot, he drank a lot, he was not healthy. And I think intuitively he knew he probably wasn't doing so great. So he just didn't go. And one day, I think I may have been there. He and I and maybe my brother or sister were out shopping, and he just collapsed in the community. And I don't remember. Obviously, I don't remember this, but I'm told by my family members that they had to call the ambulance. He just passed out at a store, and they had to call the ambulance, and they took him away. And my sister reports that she knew, and he looked like he knew that he was never going to come home, and he never did come home, and he passed away 6 months later of lung cancer. Um, so, elders, go to your doctors, get your checkups. I know it's a pain, I know it's a hassle. A lot of elders are concerned about money, and that the co-pays and all that kind of stuff. just a little bit of prevention is a lot better and a lot cheaper than major illness going down the pike. So that's criticizing or skipping health-related activities. Next one, number 6. I think we're at number 6. Yeah, one of my personal favorites: hoarding. I am on a mission. For those of you that know me, know that I live in 2 places. I did an Instagram post a few weeks ago when we moved, and I called it on this episode of Hoarders. Now, I am not a hoarder. Don't think that's denial. I try to live as simply as possible. I try to live with as little stuff as possible. Now, for those of you that like Josh, who's been around for a while, he remembers the big house, the mansion with the 5 bedrooms and the big backyard and all that stuff. And since that big house, a while ago now, all of our houses have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, what happens when you have the same amount of stuff and you're trying to cram it into a smaller place? You feel like an episode of Hoarders. Now, what I said in joking in this, and you can look it up on Instagram, on this episode of Hoarders, it was during our move, and we could not believe what we had accumulated in 5 years. You know, and it's not that we plan to move every 5 years, but we are looking toward retirement. We are looking to downsize. We're looking to get rid of stuff. We're looking to have a life of travel and, you know, a nice retirement where we can go with freedom, you know, anywhere we want. And having smaller places makes it easier to do that. I saw Mark Cuban, the billionaire, interviewed this morning, and he's great. And he was talking about his lifestyle, and he says, you know, when then they were just asking, what's it like to be a billionaire? And he kind of rolled his eyes. And he has a story where he, you know, worked hard and he sold a company and he made a bunch of money in a short amount of time. And he says, you know, the billionaire lifestyle is really a lot of work. And he goes, and I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong, but he says, we have the big house. And the bigger the house, the more people you have, and the less privacy you have, and the more stuff you have. And I remember my partner Rick worked with some very wealthy clients when he had a landscape company in Las Vegas for 20 years, and he worked with some really rich people. And one of them, I'll never forget, said, uh, "This is a funny story." And I'm not violating confidence. She's not a client. She was a client of Rick's. She's probably not even alive anymore. This is funny. Rick and I would compare clients. So he had a landscape company in Las Vegas for 20 years. He was a golf course superintendent before that. He was very into horticulture, very gifted in that. I have the clinic here, and we would compare notes as to who was crazier, my patients or his clients. His clients invariably won because they weren't my joke was, well, at least mine are medicated. You know, at least I have people and I can give them medicine and they can calm down and all that kind of stuff. I'm telling you, and this is a gross generalization to all you billionaires out there, to all you rich people out there, but people are crazy about their lawns here in Las Vegas. They are really fastidious, and he would get calls at all hours of the day and night about the sprinklers and the grass and the length of the grass and this blade of grass is out of place and things like that. So he's working with a new client, and he comes home one night. We're debriefing, and I said, he goes, "Oh, I got a new client. It's out in Boulder City. Boulder City is out by the Hoover Dam here, and it's a very wealthy conservative area." He says, "Yeah, they just moved from their 400-acre avocado farm in San Diego County." I'll say that again: 400 acres in San Diego County. And then they built a new house, 12,000 square feet in Boulder City, up on a cliff. You know. And then I said, "Wow, that's a lot of money." And well, he said, so she was the heiress to an airline fortune, and I'm not going to say the names. I don't need to. The heiress, so she was born into wealth of an airline that not an airline, air manufacturer. They make planes. Sorry, make planes. And then she met a test pilot in the 40s after World War II. They fell in love. And and then in the 70s, they started this little import-export business. And he's telling me the story, and it's building up. And he says, yeah. And then they just sold it, you know, a year ago or so for several $1 billion. Perhaps you've heard of it, Pier 1 Imports. Now, unfortunately, Pure One Imports after that sale has gone out of business, which is kind of tragic. I used to love Pure One Imports for housewares and things like that, really cool stuff. But, the level of money we're talking about is, and the level of crazy, and the level of stuff that we can accumulate. And so bringing us full circle back to the elderly and to people who are, I am dealing with, I felt like I was on an episode of Hoarders. We're going through our stuff. We're trying not to have storage units, right? We have let go of so much. And now we're at the point where there's sentimental things, yearbooks, photo albums, certain pieces of clothing, certain things that have sentimental value. And what you're going to deal with as you get older, your parents or grandparents get older, is it's going to be tough to let go of certain things. So I inherited all of Aunt Lillian's stuff. Aunt Lillian was raised during the Great Depression, the last Great Depression in the 30s. She had filing cabinets full of every check, every bank statement, every bill, every piece of paper that she had ever encountered for she and her husband for 60 or 70 years. Remember the filing cabinets, the metal ones with the 4 drawers? She had like 10 of them. Lucky me. That's what I got. Now, to look through that stuff, and she saved everything. She did not throw anything away. Now, she lived in an apartment and had a storage place for some of her, this kind of thing. And some of it was really great. Signed autograph pictures of Joan Crawford, Betty Davis, signed autograph pictures of major Hollywood stars. And then some furniture, some nice furniture and that kind of stuff. But she never threw anything away. Now, to go into her apartment, it was neat and it was clean, but she never threw anything away, and she was quite organized. She really was. She had her own business when she was working, and she was quite organized. And for this little lady, it was a truckload of stuff. So one of the dangers that elders face as they lose things, as we downsize, as we try to economize, is letting go, of things, and that's tough. And the flip side of not letting go is hoarding, and that is, of course, you've seen the show Hoarders. That's an anxiety disorder, and I'm not going to go into that today. But hoarding is it's a real issue, And I remember I had the feeling where Rick is holding up this thing that means nothing to him, and I was like, no, it's my mother's, no, it's my sister's who passed away 20 years ago. No, you can't. And I had that feeling like, oh, I wasn't ready to part with it yet. So that's one of the things that we face as we get older. All right, number 7. Refusing to ask for help. Many elders and seniors are fiercely independent. One of the things that how we meet our needs is by being independent, by being able to do the things that we can do. As people age, it becomes increasingly difficult to do everything. One of my roles in the hospital as a social worker was discharge planning, and particularly in the emergency department. One of the things that I often was faced with is yeah, it's a phenomenon. You may not have heard of it, but it's called, it's probably called elder dumping or granny dumping or grandpa dumping. And it's where the family has now exceeded their capacity to take care of grandma or grandpa or dad or mom. And they literally just drop the family member off at the ER and disappear. I know that seems harsh, but it happens. It still happens. By law, a hospital cannot discharge a patient to an unsafe condition. So part of the role of the social worker is to discharge planning, meaning they come into the ER, they're admitted to the hospital, whatever hospital it is, and it's the role of the social worker and the physician and everybody to make sure that wherever the patient goes, that it's safe. And many of these seniors have nobody. They have not asked for help. They have no caregivers. They have no family. They have no friends. They have isolated. They have hoarded. They have remained fiercely independent until the day that they can no longer be independent. And then their biggest fear is realized, and then their rights are taken away from them. And they are involuntarily placed in a hospital or a nursing home or that kind of thing. And so this refusal to ask for help has long-term consequences. Now, this is not an either or scenario. along with socialization and having a strong psychosocial network and a collection of people to check in on them, even so much as, neighbors just checking on. And you've heard the stories, I suspect, where people have passed away and nobody knew it. I mean, Gene Hackman, I'm sorry, is the most recent example. He was in the news a few weeks ago. He died at 95. His wife was, I think, in her 50s or 60s. I don't recall. They were dead for weeks before they were discovered. And the only reason that they were discovered was that there was a scheduled maintenance of the house. Now, Gene Hackman is a very well decorated actor, very wealthy. There was no one, and apparently, and again, you can research this yourself, but what I took away was that she died first of some virus or some illness, something that happened that apparently, and she was otherwise in good health, but she got sick. He had no ability to take care of her. They had apparently no contact with friends or family or loved ones, and he had children. And I don't remember the exact details, but they were dead for a long time before they were discovered. And what they came to in the investigation was that he was in the house with her until he died of dehydration and malnutrition. And a dog died who was in a kennel of dehydration and malnutrition. And so that's the consequence. And so this thing about not asking for help, it's not about being needy or clingy or dependent, but as we age, it's important to have a network. And I'm personally, I am the network for many of my family members. I'm the network for many of my friends who have me listed as an emergency contact. Happy to do it. Happy to do whatever I can to support others. So this is number 7, refusing to ask for help. Really a double-edged sword as people try to maintain their individuality and their ability to stay in their homes. Number 8, stop. Oh, wow. I'm not sure what that was. To stop taking risks. So I'm older, I'm 65, and I love being this age. I feel better than I have for so long. And yesterday, as a joke, one of the students said, "Dr. Scott, we want to go skydiving. You want to go?" I went, "Sure, let's go skydiving." He went, "What?" I said, "I've been skydiving before. Let's do it. I liked it. I love skydiving. It's great." People make assumptions of you when you're older, that you don't know how to do anything and that you're not capable of doing anything and you wouldn't necessarily take a risk. I have been skydiving. I really enjoyed it. It was a rush. Imagine it was a rush. Now I didn't do I did the one-time thing where you've got tandem, you've got an instructor, you have to go through this. It's a cool thing. Do it. Lake Paris, California. There's a really cool skydiving thing. Not the point of the story. The point is, as we get older, sometimes we get afraid and that we stop traveling. Our world gets very small. And I think it's really important for elders and for seniors to continue to take risks, to open a business, do something, do something that's exciting, to do something that you haven't done before, like that, skydiving. Why not? And again, it's fine. Yeah, that's all. That's all I'm going to say about that. Take risks. All right, number 9, dwell on the past. It is important for seniors and for our elders to reminisce, do life review. I love the stories. I tell a lot of stories. I think it's important. I think stories, and if you follow Huna, in the oral tradition of almost all indigenous cultures, there wasn't a written language. It was all talk story. It was all all of it was stories. And Kumu will say when he grew up on Oahu, he had elders, and you never got content. You didn't get a handout. You didn't get an outline. It was all metaphorical. It was all stories. And so while I firmly believe in storytelling as a way to learn and to pass things on to the next generation, there's a storytelling aspect to growing older that's wonderful and generative. And then there's a dwelling on things that are long past, betrayals, relationships, deaths. Part of my role as a clinician is to help people move on. We do a lot of work around forgiveness. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not condoning. Forgiveness is not getting together for coffee. We talk about that in terms of Ho'oponopono, or our Hawaiian code of forgiveness. But there's a difference between, forgive me, wallowing in the past and only holding on to the negativity or the grudge or the betrayal, how you were wronged. Um, and I've done a video about this, that how do you know somebody's dwelling on the past is they're repeating themselves. If you've ever had anybody that just tells the same story, not even an older person, about their job or about their ex or about their child or about the betrayal, and you've heard it a million times. And I offered you in that video that I did about people repeating themselves, is that there's something that they don't feel that they've been heard. And so sometimes I will say, what about this is so hard? What about this do you not feel is resolved? What do you need me to hear? Where haven't you felt heard? And again, with Huna and a lot of the processes we do, we're able to move on from that. So while I am not discouraging, in fact, I'm encouraging storytelling. And oh man, Aunt Lillian, my mom would tell stories about the big band era in the 30s and 40s in New York and Chicago. My mom, basically worked for Al Capone. She was in speakeasies during Prohibition performing when alcohol was illegal. Yes, people, alcohol was illegal for a time in the United States. And those are great stories, but they weren't whiny, complaining, oh, poor me, and I'm wallowing in self-pity stories. They were interesting stories. So I think that the danger as we get older is that we can wallow or dwell on negativity of things long since past. Now, remember, I'm the one running a veterans program. I'm going to tell you about this guy. I can't use his name. Just met him this week. 95 years old. Korean War vet. I'm sorry. I'm moved. 95 years old. Sharp as a tack. Walks with a cane, but I mean fit, spry, having some depression, and has not, in those days, remember, never let him see you sweat. Boys, don't cry. Don't be a sissy. Suck it up. Move on. All that stuff. And so just now, at 95, he's asking for help. He's asking for therapy. He's on some meds and antidepressants and helping a little bit, and he's ready to tell his stories. And so I had an hour with this beautiful gentleman, this elegant gentleman, telling me stories of the Korean War and Vietnam. And I was moved to tears, and he was moved to tears. And he needs to do some crying. That is not what I'm talking about. I am not talking about wallowing in self-pity. This is a very strong man who has sucked it up for several generations. It's now time for him to start processing some of the trauma he went through. That's why people like me or us exist, is so that we can help people tell their stories in a way that's healing, that's therapeutic. And that's not what I'm talking about the energy of an elder dwelling on the past. And so, again, in those days, people were just taught, you just shut up, you just don't talk about it. And so this guy, bless his heart, 95 years old, is ready to start talking, and he's ready to start processing. And I just think that's beautiful. And he's very well supported. He lives in a senior independent living complex, kind of like I was referring to, not co-housing, but he has got support. He's got a female friend who's much younger. I'm just putting that out there, that helps him. Who am I to judge? He's got support. And all he wants to do is be able to process the trauma of what he saw. And he started getting into some of it in terms of the combat, the death and all that sort of thing. And so it is important to process that. That's different than everything is negative and everything is horrible. And, I can't believe in 1965 they did this to me, and whiny, whiny, whiny. Okay. All right. So that is number 9. We're almost done, folks. Number 10 is resist change. This is up against also the one earlier about stopping learning, criticizing new things. Change is inevitable as we age. And I've told you a bit about our trajectory, that we just keep downsizing. And we're in we're in 2 small apartments now, because I have a place here in Las Vegas. And people are funny. I ran into, on Facebook, an old high school friend from band. She was a senior when I was a sophomore. And of course, she has a married name and she used her full name, and I didn't have any idea who it was. I don't know if that's happened to you where somebody reaches out. Well, do you remember me? And my name is such and such. Of course, I don't recognize the name at all. I finally said, did you have a different name in high school? She goes, oh, yeah, I was so and so. I was like, well, why didn't you say you were so and so? I didn't know who you were. So we have been corresponding. It's been really nice to connect with her. She lives in another state, and we were reminiscing and about things and bringing each other up to date on what we're doing in our lives. She's been following me on Instagram and social media, and so I wanted to know about her. And she, I forget. I think she saw one of the videos on moving or something. And she said, "You live in an apartment? That just seems so weird. I thought you would live in a mansion." And I thought, that's very sweet. And I'm kind of done with the mansions. We're not into the mansions anymore. The mansions get dirty. The mansions are expensive. The mansions have high water bills and high electric bills. The mansions need cleaning. The mansions have yards. The mansions have pools. And so, no, not at all. And I think that sometimes people see aging as just loss. You're losing friends, people die, you're losing material things, you're losing, you're losing, you're losing. And they really encourage seniors that I work with to reframe that. And I'm loving purging. I'm loving getting rid of many things. Some things I'm still holding on to. I'm working at it. And it's fun. It can be fun to have things change. And whether we like it or not, and this gets back to the isolation, things are going to change around us. So why not embrace it? Never mind the rapid change of technology and just the change of culture and the change of the world that's going through, never mind climate change. But as we age, it's important to stay light on our feet. And so that's what we're trying to do. In fact, just yesterday, Rick said, should we get an RV? Like, now, I was a very big critic, just so you know, big critic of RVs. Like, who would ever do that? Listen, who would ever do that? Seems so weird. Wow, they got to hook it up and you got the toilet and you got the smell. We're thinking of it. So just so you know, that's all of a sudden attractive. I don't know why. So stay light on your feet. Don't resist change. Stay open to new possibilities. Stay open to new horizons and don't resist it because life is going to change around you if you don't. I can't believe I'm actually entertaining an RV. In fact, the one we're looking at is going to be hooked up to like a Ford F-350 pickup truck that Rick is coveting. And it's going to be one of those like fifth wheel things. It's called a fifth wheel or a third wheel. I don't know. Where you hook it up to the back of the pickup and you drag it. I can't even believe myself that I'm even remotely considering it. But we are. So in retirement, I might even be camping somewhere besides the balcony of the Ritz-Carlton. Who knows? You can't know people. People change. It's amazing. All right, couple more. 11. This gets back to 11 is the stoic self-image. And then never let them see you sweat. I was so pleased with this vet, 95. Now, he is the oldest one I've seen. He is the only Korean vet I've seen. I've had a few Vietnam vets, but remember, these guys are old now. I've had an 86-year-old from Vietnam. I've had a couple of 87, 88-year-olds who are in group. But they're a dying breed. I mean, literally a dying breed. And I am so happy that this guy is asking for help. It is overrated, this stoic self-image that I've just got everything handled and I don't need help, and totally okay to ask for help. I think it's really important to have a number of at least trusted individuals. And then finally, and this is a difficult one, number 12, we'll close with this. Being chaotic and unorganized. Goes along with the hoarding, goes along with the activities of daily living. What tends to suffer in the very old is their ability to just keep up with things. And so, sorry, I don't have a mansion, but I have a cleaning lady. Sorry, I do in both places. Every 2 weeks, $100 comes in, cleans. I love going home. I don't know about the rest of you. $100, well worth it to come home. The refrigerator's clean. The sheets are changed. The place smells good, right? I'm not ashamed to say that I have it's not even a cleaning lady, it's cleaning teams now. They have a whole team. They come in, they're just there for an hour and they just descend on the place and you have to leave and they do the thing and they clean it all up. I love that. I have a lot of help. I have Josh help. I have help. I don't need to do it. And one of the things that I really work on with all the volume of information, certainly that I'm juggling, is to try to stay organized. Things drop out. It's hard to manage all this information that we're bombarded with on a daily basis. It's even harder for the seniors. And part of the natural thing, kind of the slack that I cut to the seniors, clinically here at the clinic, or even my brother who's 75, he's 10 years older than I am, and his wife are both similar age. Um, they do really well, juggling the bills and juggling all the technology and the computer and the cell phone and all that stuff. And it is difficult. Um, and that's why I really believe that people who get older should have some trusted family members to help them with their finances. And of course, as you know, and I'm preaching to the choir here, older people can get paranoid for good reason, because a lot of older people are stolen from and embezzled from. And it is both things are true. Aunt Lillian, I'm going to tell you the story. So she had a stroke as she was on her way out. She was 94, 95, something like that. And I was her only family. I was it. So I was certainly the executor of her estate. I was her caregiver. I was everything. And she never lived with me, by the way. She lived independently until she went into the nursing home. And she would call me. We would talk on the phone, and just great to the very end. Even when she was aphasic, when she couldn't speak, she just had a brightness, in her eyes, until she died. Just lovely. Very Christian. Very, very much a woman of faith, strong faith. And she said, "I think people are stealing my stuff." And my initial reaction at 25 or 26 or however old I was like, "Oh, you're just paranoid. You're just old." Well, then I would go there and I'd visit her at least every week, maybe sometimes twice a week. People were stealing her stuff. She wasn't lying, because I would put things in her drawer and I would be, they knew about it, but yeah, that happens. People steal stuff. Staff steal stuff. Other residents steal stuff. So you have to kind of balance. Are they just paranoid and thinking that, and self protection, and don't talk about the money? In another video, I did talk about the couple that I was helping with the guy in the nursing home, and they were crying broke, and they wanted to get on Medicaid, and they were worth millions, and hoarding the money, and nobody could know about the money. Well, when you get on Medicaid, the government wants to know where your money is. And they had millions of dollars, and were grumpy that they had to spend any of it at all for his nursing home care, and that goes on. And that's why I think that there are organizations that exist, senior care networks that exist. There are ombudsmen and various senior organizations that will help free of charge, nonprofit organizations that will help seniors stay. Because really, and I do have a bias, having worked, and I specialized in gerontology. I don't talk about that, but I did, my specialty in graduate school was gerontology, or the aging. Um, I think it's better that it's not a family member that takes care of the money. And I think it's great to be with their conserved, or if they have an ombudsman or some. I think it's better if you're faced with that, because you don't want to be accused of something you're not doing. And you hear about it every day, where seniors are fleeced for their whole retirement, that kind of stuff. So there are organizations that will help, and staying organized and staying on top of the doctor's appointments. I think it's great to have an attendant, or have an assistant, or to have, something. They know money's tight, and seniors. The other thing is the seniors are tight. By I get tighter and tighter, about letting go of the money, and so I think it's totally okay for them to ask help. And if you are the family member, when I have been, and I've been the executor of estates a few times, because I'm at my age, I've lost many family members. And all I do is just, everything's in QuickBooks, or everything's in Quicken, or everything's in a spreadsheet, everything is accounted for, every deposit, every withdrawal, every check. And I just make sure that I'm showing the family, this is what mother's thing was, this is what dad's thing was, this is what Aunt Lillian's thing was, so that there can be no question about pilfering or stealing or anything like that. So, all right. I think that's enough for today. Those are the 12 deadly habits of growing older. Please avoid them. Please have fun out there. And we will see you next week for another YouTube Live. Thanks so much for joining.